Hello everyone, Eternal Flame here, and today I'm here to explain everything we know about the curse technique Shrine. Now, what is Shrine, you might be wondering? Well, Shrine is the curse technique that belongs to Sukuna. It is mainly based around slashing, but it also has the fire ability to it. However, there's a lot more to it than just simply slashing and fire. This is mainly because Shrine varies in how it looks depending on the user, as well as what it focuses around. For example, because of Sukuna and how much he loves to eat, his Shrine more so centers around the art of cooking itself, where the slashes are like tools to prepare an opponent to be cooked, and then the fire arrow is made to be what cooks them directly. Of course, we also know there's another variant of Shrine, which is the Shrine that belongs to both Yuji and Yuta. Yuta copied Yuji's variation of Shrine, however his doesn't appear to be any different from how Sukuna uses it, so we're just going to ignore Yuta and we're going to go straight to Yuji and how Yuji uses Shrine. Now, Yuji has not shown the capability of using the fire arrow, so we don't know if this is a Sukuna specific thing, or if Yuji has the capability in the future of awakening the fire arrow. However, there's nothing that really indicates that it's Sukuna specific to the Shrine, so Yuji might have the potential to awaken the fire arrow. However, Yuji's variation of his slashes have seemed to take on more of a scissors-like indicator in comparison to Sukuna's, which is more based around knives. Now, other than these indicators being because of their characters themselves, we don't really know what this means, we don't know if it's something different. However, we do know it's because they were awakened in different eras. However, we're going to get back to Yuji's slashes in a minute, as now we're going to go over the different types of slashes that Sukuna has shown off and how they function. So up first, we're going to go into Cleave, mainly because there are less variations of Cleave, and I think it's the easier one to explain out of the two slashes, and yeah, we don't have to do too much time on it. Cleave is a close quarters based combat slash where Sukuna has to directly touch an opponent. As a result of that, he is able to land slashes on the opponent that automatically adjust to an opponent's curse energy and toughness. Unless, of course, if it is used in a domain expansion. If it is used in a domain expansion, then it will automatically apply Cleave to the opponent due to it being part of the sure hit for the domain itself. However, there is something rather important to know about Cleave, which is the fact that it does have limits to it and limits to how far it can adjust to the opponent. The main reason that we know that is because we know output can affect the level Cleave has on an opponent and can affect the level of deepness of the cuts. The reason why we know that is because Yuji was repeatedly nerfing his output throughout the entirety of the Shinjuku Showdown battle, making his abilities less and less effective. The main reason why I believe that's important to establish is because I know some people do believe Cleave is just an insta one-shot ability when it is not. It actually does have limits. Sukuna can put more or less output into Cleave, which will end up deciding how strong or weak it is after it does adjust to an opponent's durability. It does have durability adjusting properties, but it's not full-on durability negation able to cut anybody who it touches. However, there is something else rather important to establish, which is the fact that Cleave also works on buildings and people itself. It doesn't just work on sorcerers, because I know for a while people thought that it only worked on sorcerers. However, we see it work both on Maki, who has no curse energy whatsoever, as well as its variant known as Cleave Spiderweb, which is we're going to transfer over to Cleave Spiderweb. Cleave Spiderweb is a variation of Cleave. We have no idea when Sukuna made Cleave Spiderweb, but we know it is a variation that he utilized when he was inside of Megumi's body, fighting against both Yuji and Maki back in 215, and used it to work around the fact that Megumi was nerfing his output whenever he hit Maki or Yuji. He used it on the ground in that battle to make a large portion of the ground collapse in order to hit Maki and Yuji with that part of the ground exploding. So this just shows while Cleave is much more effective on sorcerers, it still can be used on anything as well. It just wouldn't be able to adjust as well due to it only adjusting mainly to curse energy and not just general durability. It's also contact based like I said before. Yuji and Yuta also have both utilized their own versions of Cleave, and while Yuji does have a little bit of a different variation, Yuta's isn't all too different when he did use it on Sukuna. Yuji's variation of Cleave itself also isn't that different from Sukuna, however, it leads even more to Cleave having limits, mainly because the main reason why Yuji's Cleave didn't cut through Sukuna's leg is because of its output being low, which shows very heavily output does affect Cleave. And now up next we're going to get into Dismantle. Dismantle is the basic slashing attack that Sukuna always utilizes when it comes to ranged abilities or slashes he launches out at an opponent. These slashes have displayed great amounts of destructive capacity when it was in Sukuna's body, Sukuna showing off the ability to straight up cut through buildings, and in the anime cut through giant lakes of lava. However, while it is a powerful technique, it also has a great amount of precision that Sukuna uses it with. For example, when Mimiko had tried to take out her phone in order to use that curse technique on Sukuna, Sukuna without even moving was able to tear her into cubes and then make those cubes basically vanish out of existence. Which, speaking of that, in the anime, Dismantle has shown off the ability to be able to slash so fast that it can keep lakes of lava away from Sukuna and basically make a perfect sphere for Sukuna to stay inside that's perfectly cutting any projectile that's coming at him, at least when Jogo is trying to fire a bunch of lava bullets at him. He was able to do that without showing any indicator that he was using Dismantle as well. And before you assume that Sukuna can't do that in the manga, he directly shows against Kusakabe that he can use Dismantle without any type of indicator whatsoever. Which does imply the indicator of Sukuna's hand movements is more than likely just an extra step in order to make the technique more powerful, rather than it being a necessary step to do. It's just there to make the Dismantle that much more powerful. Speaking of that, Dismantle also seems to carry an invisibility property to it, or at least it's extremely hard to see, as currently we only have 4 characters who have actually been noted to be able to see Dismantle. Or, well, maybe 5 characters, one of them is much more debatable than the others. And those 4 characters that are not debatable at all are Mahoraga, Maki, Yuji, as well as Kashimo. Kashimo was able to see it through his X-ray vision, Maki was stated to be able to see it thanks to her extrasensory, Mahoraga adapted to see it, and Yuji had the same technique and had shown the ability to block it and actually see the technique coming at him. The character who also might be able to see it is Gojo, because Gojo has a weird moment of reacting to the Dismantle. However, it's kind of debated to the end of the earth whether Gojo can or cannot actually see the Dismantle properly. For the sake of this video, I am going to take a neutral approach. However, in my opinion, there is arguments for both sides. By extension, Toji should also be able to see Dismantle, mainly because Toji and Maki are the physical exact same. We also know New Shadow Style Simple Domain is able to detect Dismantle because Kusakabe had used it to block the attack. So wielders of New Shadow Style Simple Domain can detect Dismantle, but it doesn't mean they can see it. They more so automatically react to the attack coming at them and block it. However, before we can even move on to Dismantle's variants, there is one more thing I need to talk about that has been debated about recently. However, more people are coming along to one side, which is, does Dismantle get affected by output, and is Dismantle able to be held back or not? In the past, some people were under the interpretation that Dismantle wasn't affected by output whatsoever, mainly because of how the narrator themselves described Dismantle and Cleave back in the Shibuya incident, where the narrator said, Sukuna has 2 types of slashing attacks, the default /Dismantle and the other Cleave, which can be adjusted depending on the target's toughness and curse energy level to cut them down in one fell swoop. This has led several people to be in the opinion that Dismantle doesn't alter its output at all and all Dismantles are the same. However, I believe that is the incorrect interpretation, and it's more so saying that when a Dismantle is launched out, Dismantle will always remain the same output that Sukuna had put into it. However, Cleave can adjust itself depending on an opponent's toughness and durability. However, to put it more simply, when Sukuna launches out a Dismantle and he chooses the level of output it's going to be, that is the level of output it's going to be when it gets launched out. However, when he launches out a Cleave and the Cleave lands on an opponent, it can adjust itself to become even stronger for an opponent's toughness. The main reason why I believe output does affect Dismantle is because of something in 214. When Sukuna launched out a large wave of Dismantles, he makes a statement that Yuji should not have been able to survive this and he wasn't that tough, before he realizes the reason that Yuji could survive this was because Megumi was nerfing his output. So, by extension, it does mean that output does have to affect Dismantle, because if it didn't, then Yuji wouldn't have survived, or Sukuna would have never made this statement. Furthermore, we also know chance and hand signs can increase the strength of Dismantle as well. However, now that we got that out of the way, we're going to go over the variants of Dismantle that do exist, and oh boy, there is a lot of variants of Dismantle to talk about. Up first is what I like to call Net Dismantle. The reason why I call it that is because there's no official name for the Dismantle variant. This is just when Sukuna launches out a large amount of Dismantles that look like a net. This is what he used to kill Kashimo, he used it on Yuta, and this is something similar to what he used on Mimiko as well to tear her into cubes. In the anime, when Mahoraga and Sukuna were fighting, he also used it on a building that was coming at him. Now, these aren't different from normal Dismantles, they're just in a different shape with a large amount of them, making it much harder to actually dodge them. The biggest variation of this technique that we have seen are Dismantles that are so huge that the net itself makes Kashimo look tiny in comparison. However, that is after Sukuna does a bit more chanting in order to make it more powerful, so yeah. The next variation of Dismantle that Sukuna utilizes is one he utilizes when he fights against Maki, where he surrounds his finger in slashes. He also does this against Yuta in order to make sure that Yuta's cursed katana doesn't actually hit him either, but he mainly uses this against Maki so he can keep Maki's sword away from him and actually catch the sword if necessary. Now, we do know this version of Dismantle is rather powerful because it is able to clash with Yuta's slash as well as clash against Maki's soul split katana. Sukuna has also displayed the ability to launch an AoE Dismantle. This was mainly because when Choso, Kusakabe, and Ino appeared on the Shinjuku Showdown, when they were standing on different sides of Sukuna, when they immediately landed, Sukuna was able to launch out slashes at the same time on all of them. And he did all of that without using a physical indicator as well that he was going to launch out slashes. Just to really hammer in the point that Sukuna can use these slashes without any type of indicator whatsoever. And then there's finally the final variant, which is the World Cutting Slash. where under normal circumstances after Sukuna uses the unmounted hand sign, he is able to launch out a slash that targets existence itself. It is a slash that targets space and deletes that space as well as anything that exists within that space. It doesn't matter how strong you are, how tough you are, or how durable you are, at least in JJK standards, it is physically impossible to survive that slash without being a fourth dimensional being, or something higher than that. It's actually that crazy of an attack and debatably the strongest attack in all of Jujutsu Kaisen. Now the reason why I say normally it would only require the Admanton hand sign is because under normal circumstances that is all that would be required in order to make this attack. However, thanks to Gojo, Sukuna was forced to place a binding vow on the technique, where instead it would require 3 additional hand signs as well as a total of 3 chants in order for it to be used. Hi, so past Flame here, I accidentally made a mistake. He only requires to make the palm hand sign as well. He doesn't actually need 3 additional hand signs, just needs to make the chants. In exchange for that binding vow, Sukuna was able to use it one time without any limitations whatsoever and basically make it instantly appear on Gojo. However, it should also be noted it is at least somewhat implied to travel normally. It's just more so the variation he used on Gojo didn't need to travel thanks to the binding vow he made. The main reason why it is implied to travel normally is mainly because Maki is actually capable of dodging it as well as Kashimo is capable of dodging it after Sukuna warns him. Which, speaking of, Sukuna has only used the World Cutting Slash a total of 4 times. Those 4 times were against Maki, Gojo, Kashimo, and Higuruma. He did not use it against Yuta mainly because we know based on everything we saw, he was not able to make the hand sign requirement in order to use the World Cutting Slash. The main reason we know that is because Sukuna's hands were being held together, so that was just a chant amp dismantle that ended up cutting Yuta in half. That was not the World Cutting Slash. This was done after Sukuna saw Mahoraga launch out a slash that had this property and applied it to dismantle. It should be noted Mahoraga's slash is not dismantle, just a curse energy infused slash, but Sukuna was able to copy that property and apply it to dismantle because, as Angel talked about, Sukuna is able to copy anything he sees after seeing it just once. However, all the World Cutting Slash really is just a different interpretation for what Dismantle can target. So because of that, I do think it is potentially possible for Yuta and Yuji to learn how to do World Cutting Slashes in the future, assuming Yuta still has access to Shrine and, well, isn't dead in the next chapter. Granted, just because they had the potential possibility to learn it, I don't think that 100% guarantees that they will learn it, just that I think it is possible for both of them to be able to learn it in the future if they tried hard enough. Oh, and also Sukuna's Dismantle does carry soul damage properties, mainly because it can hurt Mahito, as well as the fact that it is capable of removing Inumaki's arm, and Inumaki can't really regrow that arm with RCT. And Yuta very specifically says that RCT as well as medicine won't work to recover his and Hana's arms, which implies either because their RCT output is too weak to recover them, or because Sukuna has some soul damaging properties and that's why they're permanently gone. However, while it's all the Dismantle variations that Sukuna has displayed, there's actually one variation of Dismantle that Yuji has displayed. Now, it should be noted, Yuji's Dismantle is a bit different from Sukuna's Dismantle, mainly because Yuji currently hasn't shown off the ability to launch out ranged slashes. Now, I don't think it's impossible for him to, I think that's more of a skill thing, but currently Yuji has not displayed the ability to launch out ranged Dismantles, and probably won't ever, but I still think it's possible for him to eventually learn. However, Yuji's soul Dismantles do have the properties of being able to damage the soul directly. This is mainly through a binding vow that Yuji had placed on the technique to specifically target the soul and make it that much more effective at targeting the soul itself, as well as the barrier in between the soul. Now, a lot of people believe that Yuji's soul dismantles are not capable of damaging the soul. However, the most recent chapter very heavily implies it's actually Yuji's soul dismantles that killed Sukuna, as well as Nobara's soul damage that killed Sukuna. So I will say it's debatable if Yuji's soul dismantles are capable of doing soul damage. However, I'm currently leaning closer to it is, but it isn't for sure certain that Yuji's soul dismantles are or are not capable of doing soul damage. So I'm going to leave that for you guys to decide in the comment section down below. However, while that's all the variations of Dismantles that we know about, that's not where Shrine ends, as there's one final thing that Shrine has access to, which is the Divine Flame. Now, we do not know if Yuji or Yuta are capable of wielding the Divine Flame because they never used it. There's nothing that says for certain they aren't or are capable of wielding it yet. The Divine Flame is something that's only capable of being used after the user lands both Cleave and Dismantle on an opponent, effectively preparing them in order to be cooked. And then in Sukuna's case, it allows them to fire out a giant fire arrow at an opponent. Under normal circumstances, the fire arrow would be extremely slow. However, Sukuna placed a binding vow on the fire arrow to make it much more effective. Where in normal combat, the fire arrow is only capable of being utilized on one opponent. However, by extension, due to this binding vow, it has a massive speed amp. This is what he used in order to burn Jogo alive and kill him. However, it's inside of a domain that the fire arrow really gets to shine, as the fire arrow has a second binding vow through the domain itself, where this binding vow allows basically all the dust inside of the domain to be imbued with an explosive curse energy. Where after the fire arrow is triggered, all of these explosions are then triggered, making the massive explosion that we saw back in Shibuya that was capable of wiping out Mahoraga, as well as forcing Choso to have to sacrifice his life to put all of his blood in his body in order to shield Yuji from the attack. However, when he was battling against Gojo, due to the amount of conditions that he had to place on his domain and constantly change their domains, there wasn't enough time for Sukuna to make the fire arrow, and the furnace remains cooled. So yeah, that's about everything that we know about Shrine as a curse technique in JJK. Hope you all enjoyed, and I hope you all have a good day. Peace out.